For regular videos on ancient cultures and forgotten civilizations, please subscribe. Welcome to the Antiquities Travel Guide, a helping hand for visiting historic places. Follow us to different countries as we search for ancient artifacts. If you too wish to explore the ancient past through travel, we'll help you plan where to go, what to see, and how best to enjoy what you encounter. In this series of the ATG, you can accompany Natalie and me on our trek through Egypt, homeland of the ancient Egyptians, Cushites, Libyans, Asiatics, and Greeks. Come on, let's go. Perhaps the second most famous archaeological site in Egypt, after Giza, is the necropolis of Saqqara. Even so, Sakara has more pyramids than Giza and more tombs, so no visit to Egypt would be complete without a day spent there. And we want to show you some of the amazing things to see at Sakara. There are many that will absolutely impress and astound you. In this video, we will parade before your eyes some jaw-dropping tombs from the Old Kingdom and New Kingdom, after which we will take you down into the most enigmatic of all the sites in Sakara, the Serapeum, which consists of dimly lit underground passageways with gigantic stone boxes and staggered alcoves. Where did they come from? How did they get here? I will do my best to answer any nagging questions you may have about it. Because the sites of Sakara are so spread out, it would be convenient for you to have a car on hand. The three main parking lots you'll probably want to use in North Sakara are the one near the Serapeum, one near the Pyramid of Teti, and one near the Pyramid of Djoser. In the previous episode, we showed you the Pyramids of Djoser and Unas, and the lot near the Djoser Pyramid worked well for that. Today, it is Teti's turn, so we parked in the lot nearby. From the lot, you can see the Pyramid of Userkaf, with the step Pyramid of Djoser behind it. Userkaf's pyramid is not in great condition, and from what I understand, it is too unsafe to go inside. But it is notable for being the first true pyramid built here at Sakara, though not the first in Egypt. Userkaf was the first king of the 5th dynasty, and he reigned for a very short time. His pyramid was comparatively small as a result, but he did build the first known sun temple dedicated to Ra. It is south of here, which ushered in a period of ascendancy for the god Ra. The next pyramid we investigated at Sakara, and this is one you don't want to miss, was that of Teti, the first king of the 6th dynasty. Teti is believed to have reigned approximately 12 years. He had several wives and was father of at least 3 sons and about 10 daughters. When it was completed, the pyramid stood 172 feet, that's 52.5 meters, tall. As was the case with most pyramids of the time, its core consisted of limestone blocks and debris fill. The casing stones were made of dressed fine limestone, but most of them were removed long ago for other building projects, and as a result, the pyramid did not retain its shape, so it looks like just a mound now. Despite the poor condition of the pyramid's superstructure, its substructure is fairly well preserved, and we couldn't wait to go inside. The entrance was once blocked by a granite plug. A long descending corridor leads to the tomb. Although the tomb was robbed in antiquity, there are still fascinating remains for visitors like us to marvel at.
Here we are in another pyramid, the Pyramid of Teti, and you can still see the pyramid text on the walls here, and they're in pretty good condition, at least on this wall and on the one ahead of me.
Pyramid texts are basically funerary texts that were, well, they started out on the walls of tombs like this, and they basically consisted of magic spells that would guide the pharaoh into the afterlife. So he, presumably he knew these spells already, but they were very exact in case he needed a reminder.
Teti's burial chamber holds a grey-wacka sarcophagus.
Look at this, the beautiful craftsmanship, and it's a huge sarcophagus. They obviously busted in later times to try to get what was inside. But there are even some hieroglyphs in the middle of it. But you can tell already, if you think of the 4th dynasty sarcophagus of Khufu in the Great Pyramid, it's much more primitive than this one. They're getting much better at making bigger, more professionally made sarcophagi.
This is the oldest royal sarcophagus that has inscriptions on it.
It's even better than the other one.
You can see all the stars.
See the stars?
Yeah.
They're carved right in instead of just painted.
And that represents the goddess Nut.
It's the starry heavens, right? Yeah.
She was watching over.
Yeah. And there's some more pyramid text on the walls here.
Yeah.
The Egyptian priest and historian Manetho, writing 2,000 years later, states that Teti was assassinated by his bodyguards in a harem plot, but there is no contemporary evidence to support the story, except perhaps for the fact that the originally intended decorations of the tomb were never quite completed.
You know what was really exciting is when you come into a place like this for the first time and you see all this writing, and you're like, there's like information in here.
It's amazing.
You know?
Yeah.
It's exciting. I love it.
The texts here are longer but more damaged than those of Unas. In the pyramid text, we find the earliest known version of the myth about the rivalry between Osiris and Set and Horus and Set that would become so famous and more developed later on. We even have allusion to the story about how Set dismembered Osiris and had to be reassembled. Horus has united for you your limbs, speaking to the deceased Teti as Osiris, and does not allow you to be sick. He has put you together so that there is no disorder in you. Horus has set you up without staggering. The local television station had their crew at Sakara that day, and they asked to interview us.
Thank you. And Egypt is a lovely country, and we've got about 2 days ago, and we've been enjoying it very much.
Yeah, hopefully stay more. Yeah.
Oh yes, we're going to stay a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks. Yeah. Gorgeous, but not enough.
Some fragments of Teti's funerary temple have been discovered, but there isn't much left. You can visit the tombs of Teti's officials near the pyramid, such as the mastabas of Mereruka and Kagemni, which are the best. During this period, the tombs of high officials began to rival those of the king. Egyptologists consider this a sign that the wealth of the nobles was increasing at this time, while the wealth of the king was decreasing. If you're a fan of the Old Kingdom, which I certainly am, there are numerous tombs in the vicinity of Unas's funerary complex that you can visit. I want to show you a few of the more interesting and better preserved ones that we saw. You can access them by parking in the lot near the Djoser Pyramid and heading for Unas's causeway. In the last episode, I told you a little bit about mastabas. These were Egyptian tombs that consisted of a superstructure, usually rectangular, built over a burial vault that was underground. Inside the superstructure, there was usually a chapel. This mastaba is one of the largest in Sakara, and it is unusual because it is dedicated equally to 2 persons. It's commonly known as the Tomb of the Two Brothers.
Both of them, they used to be also a hairdresser for women and stuff. So when you see them inside the tomb, you're gonna see them a little bit like women. They look like a woman. So they use like little sisters.
And is this the river right here, the Nile?
The river, yeah, it's presenting the water. If you look,
Yeah.
it's what they use to catch a fish. And if you look here a little bit, you come here, you're gonna see the crocodile at the top here.
Oh, you can see that, yeah.
Yeah, the
At
crocodile,
bottom,
yeah.
right hand.
And here, the fish.
Okay.
Down there, if you look, there is 2 jackal, and the third one is fox here. Picturing 2 donkey, and he's feeding them here to walk with him.
What are these people holding here?
Offering. All this is an offering. You can see they going one by one. It's a funerary scene.
You can see the tomb owners here on the architrave. Niank Khnum on the right, and Khnum Hotep on the left, each accompanied by their eldest sons. The inscriptions identify them as supervisors of the manicurists of the palace. The writings in the tomb identify them also as prophets of Ra at the sun temple of Niusera, a king of the 5th dynasty.
It's usually the tomb start with the story of the person from the beginning until it becomes the final room where it's describing that his life ends.
The causeway of Unas was constructed partly over the top of it, so that means the brothers died before Unas's reign. The tomb's walls are decorated with scenes of many activities: fishing, farming, carpentry, butchery, gardening, jewelry making, and more.
It's a little bit rare to find a donkey inside a tomb.
And the colors are so beautiful.
Scenes like this are generally reserved for a man and wife in tombs like these, so the intimacy shown between the two men have stirred up discussion. Some scholars have interpreted this to mean that Nyankhnum and Khnumhotep were a same-sex couple. But because the men's wives and children are also shown in the tomb, others have insisted the relationship was familial and that the two men were identical twins. There is slightly more emphasis given to Nyankhnum in the tomb decor, and he has a son who is older than Khnumhotep's oldest son, so this has led some to conclude that he was the elder of the two brothers.
If we look at the two sides, if we look up here a little bit, you can see it's all the offering, because in the ancient time we used to write the numbers like odd numbers like that. 1, 1, 1, it's 3.
One wall depicts a banquet scene where both men are entertained by singers, dancers, and musicians. The middle register shows, for lack of better terms, 1 clarinetist, 2 flautists, 2 harpists, 6 chironomists, and a concert leader on the right. What's a chironomist, you ask? It is someone who practices chironomy, which is the use of signs, hand signals, as musical notation. They basically tell the musicians what to play with gestures. The inscription says they are performing a song called the Song of the Two Divine Brothers. Another tomb that wowed us was the tomb of Irukaptah, cut into the cliffside, also known as the Tomb of the Butchers. Its owner worked in the king's butcher shop.
This is...
14 statues are built directly into niches in the walls, some of them incomplete. In the Egyptian view, the condition of the physical body affected the condition of the spirit. Statues, being an embodiment of the person in material form, were one of the ways of ensuring the dead person could exist trouble-free in the next life, in case their actual body suffered any damage. 9 out of the 10 on this wall represent Irukaptah. The ones that aren't him are his family members.
And you can see also it's unfinished for a statue of the family.
So why did they finish it? They just didn't have time?
No, if it's not finished, it means that he died before they complete the tomb. And this is unfinished, see? This, so it used to be like lining first with black, and the structure he will come redone it with red marker. If it have some missing like angles or stuff, he will do it with red painting, so they will come redo it again until they go carve it like that.
There's Irukaptah sitting on a low chair. He has a mustache with a short trapezoidal beard and a shoulder-length wig. In his left hand he holds a lotus flower, which he smells. In front of his face are the words, "The libationer and butcher of the palace." Which king did Irukaptah work for? The tomb appears to have been made before the Unas Causeway, but the art style seems to be 5th dynasty, so that would place him in either the reign of Menkauhor or Jedkara.
And this is the fake door of the tomb, or the false door. False door, it used to be like if a bad spirit or misguiding inside the tomb, it go out from this false door.
The other tomb you have to see is the tomb of Mehu, which opened to the public only a few years ago after being restored. If you have the necessary ticket that grants access to a tomb and you find the door locked, just find one of the guardians and ask them to open it for you. Make sure to give them a tip before you leave. This tomb contains some of the most exquisite reliefs in all of Sakara. At the entrance you can see Mehu on either side.
So, it shows you more that the ancient Egyptian used to describe each person exactly how he looked. If we look at Mehu here, you can see he used to be a fat man.
But doesn't that also indicate that he was rich?
So he used to be married to two wives. If we look at the two sides here, you're gonna see one of his wife at the right side, and in the other side, the second wife. And you can see there is a scene, whereas if you look at this side, here, you can see it's a scene where is the mosquitoes. Do you see the mosquitoes here? And a little bit of a bird, fox, another fox hunting a bird. And you can see this is a fish, a Nile River fish.
Mehu was Chief Justice and Vizier during the reigns of Teti and Pepi I of the 6th dynasty.
Look at this.
Many of the images on the walls of these tombs depict the collection of the rich offerings being prepared for the deceased. Hunting and fishing scenes are all over the walls.
Here you can see they are shaking the flowers separated. And here also another scene where they traveling in the Nile River, and each one is carrying a different type of offering. Here, one he used the scale, and the other one writing all the way.
Look at the size of those fish.
Here, this is Mehu. So if we look at this side, you're gonna say why this one is perfect and the other one is fat.
Oh yeah,
because this is he was a young person. He still was a young man. Yeah.
And this
Here,
is the old
when he become
Mehu.
a vizier. Him and his wife.
There they are.
If we look at this scene here, you can see this is a dancing scene. He was shaking, shake it, shake it, shake it.
Love the dancing.
Right.
They're into it.
The long chapel held all the offerings that were left for Mehu. A beautifully preserved false door is at the end. It is limestone, but it is painted dark red to simulate granite and to highlight the yellow hieroglyphs. There's a stela in the niche that shows Mehu, in spirit, eating from the offerings. Images of Mehu line the bottom of the door. The false door, as it's called, was considered to be a symbolic portal connecting the world of the living with the world of the dead.
Look how the art is in such excellent condition. It's still got the color on it.
And it's all filled with offering, with jars, with holy water, with lotus flower. You can see that the two scenes here. See, if you look, he's smiling and kissing the leg of the cow before he offered it. So he's presenting it with love.
Yeah.
And you can see one cartouche of his name because he's not a king. So that's why he have one cartouche. And if you look, this is the false door.
Considering the fact that actual residences and regular buildings from this period are now mostly gone, these reliefs and inscriptions are a significant source of information about Egyptian society at the time, in addition to info about the tomb's owners, their careers, and their families. Although we visited it last that day, it makes sense to mention the tomb of Teti here, since it too is from the period we're discussing. It sits near the Serapeum, and is probably the most spectacular tomb of the Old Kingdom, not only for its size, but for the quality of the art and the preservation of the colors.
This is a very important tomb. The supervisor of the pyramids and sun temples during the Old Kingdom. So this is the 5th dynasty. So we're going to go down and see one of the greatest tombs from this period.
Who was Teti? He was an important senior official of the 5th dynasty, who served under several kings. His tomb began to be constructed under Neferkara Kakai and was finished in the reign of Niuserra. The titles held by Teti are inscribed in many places and number in the dozens. He served as the overseer of the pyramids of Neferkara and of Niuserra, as well as the sun temples of Sahura, Neferkara, Ra-Neferef, and Niuserra. These monuments were open to visitors after they were constructed, and priestly services were held there as part of the posthumous rites dedicated to those kings. These monuments came with agricultural lands and herds of livestock to support the services and the priests. So someone needed to manage all of this.
This here gives you an idea of the shiny exterior of the limestone when it was new. All this would have looked more like that. That's why they didn't paint it.
If you look at these reliefs, they're actually a little bit different from a lot of the ones we've seen, and that's because they're raised slightly. So instead of carving into the rock, it looks like they're carved around.
Teti also held the title Director of the Hairdressers of the Palace. But the title he seems to have been the most proud of, for it features prominently in the tomb, is Unique Friend, that is, of the king. It means he had the right to approach and touch his sovereign, and probably had a close relationship with him.
Look at the size of this thing. It's huge.
So it's a solid block of limestone.
So is this the bedrock under the
Yeah.
sand? Okay.
So
the
this
bedrock.
was
Indications are that the sarcophagus was carved right here from the limestone as they were hollowing out this chamber. In this way, they did not have to go through the trouble of transporting it here from elsewhere. Teti's body has never been recovered.
I tell you, if I was the supervisor of pyramids, I'd probably make a chamber like this for me.
covered,
Where are we headed right now?
We're heading towards South Sakara. There's a bit of a empty field here, but there's some more tombs down that way.
From the area around Unas' pyramid, we ventured southwards on a side mission to where New Kingdom tombs can be found. You can see the pyramids of Dashur in the distance. We will be heading there in a few days. The tombs we will be examining are from the time of the 18th dynasty. Historically speaking, we're jumping ahead 1,000 years. Yeah, 1,000 years. Can you believe it? And that's just a sliver of the time that ancient Egypt was in existence, and shows how long Sakara was used as a cemetery. The complex of tombs we are on our way to see have been under excavation by a Dutch archaeological mission since the 1970s. I'm going to show you the ones that I think are the most important and interesting. In the early 18th dynasty, nobles of high rank carved their tombs into the sides of cliffs. But from around the time of Tutankhamun, they started building what we call tomb temples. They dug tombs underground, but would put structures resembling small temples over the top. Many important officials of the New Kingdom chose to construct their tombs here. First of all because Memphis nearby was an important administrative center, but also because the popular cults of the deified Old Kingdom rulers was going strong in the New Kingdom, so people were coming here to worship them. What better place to have your own tomb? This was a sacred place.
This is Horemheb. Do you know who this is?
No. Tell me.
Yeah. He was the commander of the army under Tutankhamun, and he also became pharaoh later.
Horemheb's tomb was built when he was generalissimo of the Egyptian armies under King Tutankhamun. Remember, Tut was a boy. He died at around age 18, so Horemheb was probably in charge of most of foreign affairs. The superstructure of the tomb is fairly large. The courtyards have peristyles of papyrus bundle columns. Study of the architecture has revealed that there were 3 successive stages in the construction of the tomb, probably corresponding to his rise in status after each of his victorious military campaigns in Asia. Check out this stela next to the door. This one is a replica. The original is in the British Museum, but you can see Horemheb at the top worshipping 3 gods, Atum Horakti, Thoth, and Ma'at. Let me read to you a part of the translation so you get a taste for what it's talking about. Hail to you who are beneficial and effective, Atum Horakti. When you have appeared in the horizon of the sky, praises to you are in the mouths of everyone, for you are beautiful and rejuvenated as the disk in the embrace of your mother Hathor. Appear everywhere, your heart being glad forever. Adoration to you, Thoth, Lord of Kemenu, who brought himself into being, who was not born, unique God, leader of the netherworld. May you cause the royal scribe Horemheb to stand firmly by the side of the sovereign, as you were at the side of the Lord of the universe, as you fostered him when he came forth from the womb. Adoration to you, Ma'at, Lady of the North Wind. May you cause the hereditary prince Horemheb to breathe the winds that are brought forth by the sky. The subterranean complex can be accessed through the floor of the inner courtyard, but they didn't let us down there. There are painted scenes on the walls, but also beautiful reliefs. In the second courtyard, you can see Horemheb being rewarded by the young Tutankhamun and his wife Ankhesenamun. Heavy gold necklaces are being put around Horemheb's neck. Behind him are rows of war captives, who by their appearance can be identified as from West Asia. The prisoners are manacled and attached by the neck to each other. Women and children are included. They look frightened. What Horemheb ultimately did with these people we do not know. Nowhere does Horemheb speak of his parentage. This may be an indication that he was of humble origins and was a self-made man. Interestingly, he will go on to become pharaoh, not after Tutankhamun, but after the next king, Ai. Once he became king, this tomb was no longer good enough for Horemheb, so he gave it to his second wife, Mutnojmet, and he went on to construct a kingly tomb in the Valley of the Kings down south. The other New Kingdom tomb you should definitely visit is that of Maya, another one of the major figures in the administration of King Tut.
Oh, look at that, huh? Oh. Yeah, look at these.
His skin looks greenish or bluish up there.
That's Osiris. And this is Maya worshipping.
Who's Maya?
I think right here.
Is she a god?
It's a man.
Oh.
This is the treasurer under Tutankhamun and under Horemheb.
He was the country's minister of finance. Maya lived at the time that all the traditional temples that King Akhenaten had closed down were reopened. He would have been responsible for helping to get them up and running again. Objects found with Maya's name were found in Tutankhamun's tomb, which means Maya donated them. He may even have organized the entire funeral. This beautiful tomb he had built for himself and his wife Merit. Merit predeceased him. He died around the 9th year of Horemheb's reign. One thing I can tell you is that if you want to see all of Sakara, one day is not enough. There is so much here, and we just couldn't squeeze everything in. But one part of the cemetery that is a must-see is the Serapeum, and that is where we went next. What is a Serapeum? Well, the name comes from the Ptolemaic period in Egyptian history, when the Macedonians and Greeks dominated Egypt. At that time, the Greeks were promoting the worship of a hybrid Greek-Egyptian god known as Serapis. It was a god of their own invention, but it was their attempt to unite Greek and Egyptian religion and unify the country. Serapis included aspects not only of the Greek god Zeus, but also the Egyptian gods Osiris and the Apis bull. The rulers presented the cult as a continuation of an earlier Egyptian one. In fact, the name Serapis is a shortened form of Osiris Apis. A Serapeum refers to any holy place dedicated to Serapis, usually temples. But in this case, it refers to a sacred burial ground for the Apis bulls. What's an Apis bull? The Apis bull is the chief object of worship of the cult of Osiris Apis, which was the most sacred of all the ancient Egyptian bull cults. An actual living bull was chosen to be the Apis bull. It was carefully selected. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, the Egyptians believed that a flash of lightning descended from heaven upon a cow, giving her the Apis power. This allowed her to give birth to a special bull, which could be identified by certain distinct markings. He would have a white diamond on his forehead, an image of an eagle on his back, double the number of hairs on his tail, and a scarab mark under his tongue. When a new Apis bull was needed, the priests would go looking for such a bull. When they found one, there would be a special festival in Memphis that lasted for 7 days, and the bull would be part of a sacred parade through the city. It was believed that on this occasion, if the bull breathed upon any child, that child would have the ability to predict the future.
Here we're going. Now, if I recall, the original entrance is down here or something.
Okay.
So this is the modern entrance, but I think this was the original entrance down here.
French archaeologist Auguste Mariette discovered the Serapeum of Sakara in 1851, but the first Apis bulls were buried here before the Serapeum was ever constructed. The Egyptians simply made isolated tombs for them. This was during the New Kingdom in the 18th and 19th dynasties. There are 6 of these tombs that have been discovered so far, which consisted of a chapel above ground and a substructure beneath. Stone stelae and inscribed artifacts were found in them that revealed the dates of the bulls' interment. Mariette found 4 of these isolated tombs completely undisturbed. Bull remains were found inside wooden coffins. The bulls had been dismembered and not mummified, indicative of an earlier practice, and they had deteriorated considerably over the centuries. It was Kamweset, the son of King Ramses II, who constructed the first elaborate catacombs for the Apis bulls. This area of the Serapeum we call the Lesser Vaults. The Lesser Vaults are not currently open to the public because of their unsafe condition. The bulls interred in the Lesser Vaults were from the time of the 19th to the 26th dynasties. Then Pharaoh Psamtik I decided to begin construction of a new set of vaults, which are known today as the Greater Vaults. Mariette found a stela in the very first vault, which described Psamtik's construction project. It relates how the condition of the lesser vaults had deteriorated to a point that they could no longer be used, and so the king began work on a series of new vaults. It is the Greater Vaults that the public can visit, and that is where we're going now. The modern entrance is actually the entrance constructed in the early 5th century BCE during the reign of Darius the Great, a Persian emperor who ruled Egypt. We know this from a stela documenting this construction project. The new entrance was larger than the old one, making it easier to get the sarcophagi in. In fact, earlier in Darius's reign, a sarcophagus had gotten stuck in one of the passageways. It's still there. The catacombs were carved right into the limestone bedrock. Mariette found between 1,200 and 1,300 stone stelae in the Serapeum that commemorated the lives of the Apis bulls that were interred here. After a bull was interred, the tomb would be sealed by a brick wall with niches, and stelae were placed in the niches. These stelae provide the names of the bulls, the dates of their births and deaths, the dates of their interment, including the name of the reigning king, information about the presiding priests, and also in some cases, a description of how the sarcophagus was made and how it was transported into the vault. Other stelae were placed in niches in the tunnels. When Mariette found them, some were still in the walls, but many were lying on the floor, because the walls closing off the tombs had been dismantled by looters and vandals. Still, there were thousands of less valuable artifacts that the robbers had left behind. The stelae and the artifacts can now be found in museums, most of them in the Louvre in Paris. This is the Serapeum's first ever sarcophagus carved in stone, pink Aswan granite in this case. It was placed here in 547 BCE during the reign of King Ahmose I. Mind you, they had been making stone sarcophagi for kings for some time, but not for Apis bulls. Take a look at the beautiful craftsmanship, definitely of higher quality than even the sarcophagi of the kings of the Old Kingdom. Look at the work done on these hieroglyphs. The people who made this were masters of their work. But where's the lid? It's down the hall. Here we have the lid. The inscription on the top says, King Ahmose dedicated his monument to the living Apis, a great sarcophagus of granite. Now His Majesty found that it had not been made in costly stone by any king at any time, that he might be one who is given life forever. This clearly shows it was the first to be made of costly stone. This hallway was hollowed out some years after the sarcophagus was placed in its chamber, so that means this lid was taken off the sarcophagus and placed here in later times. I was looking at this drawing of a sarcophagus found by Mariette, and I can't help but notice it looks a lot like the one we're talking about. If so, it would indicate that the lid was still on it when it was found in the 1800s. Maybe it was Mariette's men that moved it. We are currently in the Persian section of the greater vaults. This sarcophagus was placed here by Kabash. He led a rebellion against the Persians around 338 BCE and reigned for only 3 years. This was right before Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. There is a dead-end tunnel behind the sarcophagus. What it was supposed to be for, we don't know, but it probably was intended by Darius the Great to be a new section, and it was never completed. While there are a couple of sarcophagi made of granite and 1 or 2 of limestone, the rest of the stone sarcophagi are made from granodiorite, probably from Aswan. It's the same stuff the Rosetta Stone is made from.
Beautiful. Look how huge this is. Beautiful. Beautifully crafted sarcophagus. Look at this. This is a little rougher here, but these walls are beautifully smooth. They used to polish them with sand. Sometimes you'll hear people say that the dimensions are perfect. They're not perfect, but they're close to perfect. The Serapeum is the place where the sacred Apis bulls were buried. There's only ever one Apis bull reigning at one particular time, but when it died, they would choose a new one, and then the dead bull would be interred here in one of these sarcophagi.
When an Apis bull died, it would be treated like royalty. The body of the bull would be embalmed and decorated at the Temple of Ptah in Memphis, which I told you about last time, and the bull would be brought to its tomb in a great ceremony. We have a papyrus document from the 26th dynasty that lays out the whole procedure.
This is so incredible. This is sort of what you would imagine a tomb to be like from the movies or from the storybooks.
It's almost more like a crypt because it's huge. It's like more like catacombs because so
like
many
the catacombs,
bulls were buried here. Yeah. Interred here, I should say.
Yeah. You can imagine them just being led through here.
Yeah.
No two sarcophagi are alike, which means that they are individualized, and therefore were not made in a factory. The smallest stone sarcophagus weighs approximately 20 tons, and the largest about 45 tons. The heaviest lid weighs about 25 tons. They also vary greatly in quality. 13 of them are polished to a smooth finish, and they are among the latest in the Serapeum. The Ptolemaic section has the largest sarcophagi and the largest chambers. Mariette found 13 stelae corresponding to the 13 chambers in this section, which provide information about each of them. But since they were scattered about, scholars have had to solve the puzzle of which one goes with which. Interestingly, another stela was found, which was written by an architect from the time of Ptolemy II, which describes in detail how he had constructed one of the burial chambers and how he had a sarcophagus brought in and put into it. It was a little more than a year's worth of work, but it was stretched over a period of about 6 years.
Notice a lot of them are slightly ajar, and that's because that's how there's no more mummies in them. Someone pushed it aside and took out the contents at some point in antiquity. We're in the section where these are the Ptolemaic ones. Yeah, so this is the Ptolemaic section. So these have the newest sarcophagi, and the oldest part of the Serapeum, which is over there, was all the bulls had wooden sarcophagi, but they got fancier over time, and we're now here in the Ptolemaic era, where these huge black granite sarcophagi were used. Yeah, yeah. These are beauties, aren't they?
Yeah, they're incredible. It's still hard to wrap your mind around how they managed this.
You'll find that the quality of the sarcophagus is often inversely proportional to the length of time the Apis bull lived. This is evidence that one sarcophagus took a long time to make. How were they made? Indications are that both the sarcophagus and its lid were created out of a single, roughly quarried stone. The 6 sides of the block were cut with a metal saw, iron in this period, and a wet sand abrasive. The abrasive is what wore away the stone, not the saw. Then the same procedure was used to cut off the lid. Tube drills were then used to make holes in the block as a way to start hollowing out the interior. Chisels of either stone or metal would then be used to finish out the hollowing. Smaller, more refined tools would then be used to carve out the corners. Abrasives would be used on the interior and exterior to grind the sides flat. The pockmarks you see are where they hollowed out imperfections to keep the stone from fracturing further. Yeah. Finer abrasives would be used for polishing, and as we showed you at the Djoser colonnade, glues, resins, or varnishes could also be used to get a beautiful shine. Hieroglyphs would be added last by a different group of specialists. For an in-depth discussion of the making of a sarcophagus, check out the Serapeum series by the Ancient Presence channel. Part 1 deals with the process. You might wonder how such large sarcophagi could have been moved into place. Was there enough room to maneuver them? The short answer is yes. If you want to see the measurements, the YouTube channel Sacred Geometry Decoded calculates the room needed in his video on the Serapeum, Part 1. Currently, the floor of the Serapeum is covered by a wooden walkway, and you can get glimpses of it through little windows. But the floor left interesting clues that Mariette noticed and recorded in his writing. He found traces of the wooden rollers used to transport the sarcophagi through the tunnels. He also found 2 wooden winches in one of the tombs. Prussian archaeologist Heinrich Brüsch noted the remains of double rails in one of the corridors over which the logs would have been rolled. For fuller discussion of how the sarcophagi were moved, see the excellent video made by the Scientists Against Myths channel, called The Impossible Sarcophagi of the Serapeum. They calculated that it would take 16 men to move the heaviest of the sarcophagi down the corridor. Even more interestingly, Mariette found that one of the sarcophagi had not been fully lowered into its alcove. The alcove was filled with sand up to the level of the tunnel floor, and the sarcophagus was on top. As an experiment, he had 4 of his men dig out the sand on each side, and the process lowered the sarcophagus gently to the floor. The endeavor took a little less than 2 hours. This is how he verified how the Egyptians lowered these heavy boxes into their final resting places.
This is probably the second to last, maybe, sarcophagus. This is one of the final ones that was put in here. And you can see the quality of the sarcophagi in this Ptolemaic part of the complex. Their sarcophagi are the best. But this one was not completed. And one of the reasons why we know it isn't completed is because, well, first of all, the hieroglyphs that are scratched on here, they're just in the draft version. They're not completed. And in fact, here is the cartouche for the king that would have been reigning when the bull was interred, but there's nothing in it, okay? Because they weren't sure yet who the king was going to be when the bull died, right? But then the bull died, and often happens with the tombs or any funerary stuff. If it isn't done, it doesn't matter. The person died or the bull died, and you just put him in there anyway, as is. And so they stuck it in here without it being finished, and that was that. But we've been kind of studying the order of the sarcophagi in here, and we've narrowed it down, and we think that probably this was during the reign of Cleopatra VII's father, Ptolemy XII.
This sarcophagus dates to the 7th year of Ptolemy XII, the father of the famous Cleopatra. That would be 74 BCE, only a few decades before the Romans took over. We only know it's Ptolemy XII from documents that name the kings who interred bulls here. Although certainly a magnificent sarcophagus, there are numerous imperfections on it. The stone polishers did their best to hide them.
Ehab.
This sarcophagus, left here in the tunnel, is the last sarcophagus brought here. It was probably intended to go into chamber K'. It is roughly shaped and never made it to its destination. The lid was left on the ground nearby. It's from 30 BCE, the time of the Roman conquest of Egypt. This may be why the work was abandoned abruptly. Augustus Caesar ordered that the Serapeum be closed down. Roman historian Cassius Dio describes Augustus as being invited to worship the apis, and he replied, "I'm accustomed to worshiping gods, not cattle." The Serapeum was continually looted over the centuries that followed, and Christians deliberately desecrated it as a statement against paganism, scratching out the names of bulls in inscriptions, destroying the mummies, and piling stones in and on top of the sarcophagi. We closed out the day with a special treat. My friend Mustafa invited us over to his place for a home-cooked meal. Look at that food. Authentic regional dishes. And yes, it tasted as good as it looked. We just scratched the surface of the Serapeum. If you want to find out more, I recommend the excellent 3-part video series done on it by the Ancient Presence YouTube channel. In our next episode, we are going to Giza, home of the 3 most famous pyramids in the world, but also of many other fascinating tombs. What can we say about them that hasn't already been said? Find out in our next episode, and don't forget to subscribe.